So hello, I'm sort of getting an idea of where most of you are from. There's a few people I didn't get to talk to. You're from
Barcelona?
There's a song. Right, we're from Barcelona, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any to speak to?
St. Petersburg, Russia.
Russia, right? And you're
From Spain, from Valencia.
Oh, lovely. Right. And welcome to sunny Keele. Right, Connect at Keele is the service that we provide for people with autism. So people who did get the diagnosis of Asperger's also fit within that. And there are lots of conditions that go with autism that students need support with. Does anybody have any experience of working with people with autism or people on the autism spectrum? Okay, so would it be useful for me to just say a little bit about what autism is and how it affects people for other people? It's a developmental condition. It's lifelong. So although some people do think there's a cure, in fact there isn't. And there's an argument as well that we don't really want to change people because what they bring to human life is unique and very useful. Needs are complex, so you may have dyspraxia, which is a motor functioning condition. You might have dyslexia, you might have mental health issues, you might have severe social anxiety, but there are a lot of other conditions that can come along with autism. So social and communication issues are probably the biggest, followed by anxiety, which isn't necessarily part of the condition but does appear in most people on the spectrum. Mental health conditions, again, don't come with the condition, but if you live as a person with autism in our society, the likelihood is that you are going to come across some sort of mental health condition in your lifetime. Sensory issues are massive. The fan in here previously would have very much distracted a lot of the students I work with. They would have found it impossible to focus on this with the fan, or with the strip, with the lighting being bright, or with the colour of the room. So perhaps sitting so close to somebody might be difficult. The texture of the chair could be difficult for some people. So it's about understanding those personal needs, and they're very varied. And information processing. If you've got social and communication difficulties, you're constantly catching up on the conversation. So I suppose it's a little like using a foreign language when you're not particularly fluent. You want to join in, but the conversation has moved on. And by the time you've processed the information, you can't access what's happened. So a lot of people record lectures, and so they can focus on one thing, the spoken word, without having to try and write as well. Because also they can't process the information fast enough to make notes and listen to the speech. So what I do is I connect weekly with the students. We have a weekly meeting at lunchtime on a Wednesday where ideas are shared and we have a good chat, which seems a little bit strange for people on the spectrum to come to a group that is social. However, we don't sell it as that because social is frightening. So the Connect group, it's semi-structured. There has to be some structure or people would be very anxious. So the structure is that I'm the facilitator and I have experience in working with people on the spectrum. So what I think I do is give them more time to speak than they would normally get so that they can form their ideas. And I've got to be aware of people who don't wish to speak and people who do within the room. All the seating's facing forward, which is really strange for a group that's supposed to be social. However, if you've got Asperger's or autism and you don't want anybody to look at you, and you would rather the structure meant that you could just look forward. So we keep it very formal in that respect, and people are reassured that they don't have to, you know those discussion groups that are in a circle? That's autism hell. So, no facing faces, that would just be traumatic. They raise ideas and concerns about their week at university. We've planned social events. more about that. We have student ambassadors who are current students who have had training in autism but come into that group to answer the questions really that I can't answer because I'm not a student. You know, more of the hands-on things about student life and student communication that I don't understand. It's been a long time since I went to university. So social things. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time is something that we went to see when it came to Hanley, and you're nodding, you've seen it.
No, I read the book.
You read it. The theatre production was excellent, really good. So there were a lot of sensory issues that came about because we were going to see a production, even though it was a production about autism. There were issues about travel, there were issues about the lighting, there were issues about the noise on stage that was random and unpredictable. So we worked through that, and people went to the theatre for the first time, and people went to the theatre for the first time in a group of their peers, and people went to the theatre and discussed it afterwards because it was really relevant to them.
Did they like it?
They loved it.
Okay.
They loved it. And the thing they loved most, I think, was the effects on stage, the way they presented the autism through lighting and imagery on stage.
Okay.
They were fascinated, of course, with the detail of the stagecraft. But yeah, it was a great success. And good one to see. And if you've not read it, it's by Mark Haddon. It's a very good book. So we also went to a football stadium for a tour and watch a game. So if you're aware of autism, you'll know that noise and crowds are triggers to anxiety massively. So what we did was we went on a pre-visit to Stoke-on-Trent, Stoke City Stadium, with a couple of students, and they pointed out to the organisers what the potential stressors would be. So we changed the tour to reflect the interests of the people with autism. Stoke were very good, they changed things around for us. So we went on the tour first before the football match. So the tour was to see all around the stadium and to look in the lockers, to see where the players change, to go and do a mock interview, to see where the cameras are and where all the Sky Sports goes. But by the time people started filtering into the stadium, our students were comfortable with the environment. So because we pre-planned this, they were comfortable with the environment, and they knew where they were sitting, and they knew where the talks we had about the toilets. They knew where the toilet was, they knew how to access the toilet, they knew how they could escape if they needed to get out, and they knew how to tell me that they needed to escape if they needed to get out. So we took some ambassadors, and it was freezing, and we bought scarves, and it was still freezing, and it went brilliantly. Nobody panicked. Perhaps I probably panicked more than anybody else, because I was thinking, football stadium, but nobody panicked. There was limited anxiety, and everybody enjoyed it. So that pre-planning really helped. Okay, we've been to the cinema. Lots of people on the spectrum like the Avengers movies and Marvel, and we went to an all-night showing of the new Captain America film and the previous Captain America films, which was great. I was like that by the end of the night, but everybody again loved it. So cinemas are great. You know, there are great choices out there for people on the spectrum. We've been bowling, which got very competitive. That was good. Meals out, food can be tricky for people on the spectrum because they have very distinct likes and dislikes about textures and smells and tastes. And what we've had, because we've gone out as a group, is people trying other people's food. It's like, people with autism aren't supposed to be able to do that, but they will try other people's food because they are in a secure environment with people they know, with ambassadors, with myself. And so we've had somebody trying Indian food for the first time. He decided it was too hot and he preferred a korma. But we've had people try new things, and for people on the spectrum that's massive. So what we try and do in group is say, yeah, you try something new, that's amazing. Are there any other areas where you think you could try something new now you've got that skill? We know you can do it. Because one of the things they find quite difficult is generalising an experience to another situation. So we try to help them generalise that to new things. The theatre, we've talked about the pub. Okay, a very social environment, not always liked by people on the spectrum. However, it doesn't mean that they don't want to go and experience that. So we've been to the local pub, and they know the local pub, and now they'll walk down with their friends and go to the local pub. So rather than just be confined to campus, they'll walk out off campus and go to the local pub, which I think is very British. We've had some visiting speakers. These have been suggested by the students. This guy, have you seen him abroad? He's Dean Beadle. He's an international speaker. He came to speak to us. He has autism. We've had a speaker from the arts department at Keele. She's going to work with students doing an arts project. Dean Beadle. We've had numerous careers presentations. We'll move on to careers a little later as well, but careers are difficult for people with autism because it involves an interview and it involves selling yourself face to face. So we've looked at alternative ways of presenting yourself, and we've done some workshops about careers specifically. The big plus about careers is that you can present a portfolio of your work, and that was something that people didn't realise, that before interview they can present a portfolio of their work which speaks for itself, so you don't necessarily have to. First bus transport can be a real issue for people on the spectrum. So we had a representative from First Bus come who had little passes that said, please could you tell me when I need to get off? So you don't even need to say it. Or it would say, you could fold it over and it would say, I have a communication difficulty. You could show that. So people would take that into consideration when you get on and off the bus. That was very helpful. Student Minds, so there's a supportive network of students with mental health issues who came to the group to outline what was available on campus for our students. So we have group discussions. Politics seems to feature quite a lot, which is very, very relevant at the moment. We had to sort of steer off the EU debate, but autism politics, you know, in terms of, I mean, I said it's a condition that really there is no cure for. There's a lot of politics about that. They do like to discuss that between themselves. National politics, again, we had a general election while we were in group, so people were really interested in talking about that. They discuss films, they discuss travel and how to travel around Stoke-on-Trent, looking at trains, how to get trains home, what to expect on a train. Some people have never travelled independently before they come to university. We discussed issues they might have with their accommodation, and again how to sort them out using the student services approach. Planning visits and events as a group, and I think these may seem quite sort of average for us, but if you're on the spectrum and you're planning visits and events with other people, that's a major achievement. Personal safety. People on the spectrum don't always read the signs that we would in terms of social communication. They wouldn't always know that they're under threat in the environment. So we've talked about getting home safely, you know, equipping yourself on campus so that, and always being with friends. We talked about how to recognise emotions and senses and feelings. And an interesting one that we talked about was people didn't know when they were hungry, because some people on the spectrum will either eat because they like eating, or just not eat because they don't feel hungry. So we talked about what those physical sensations were and how to recognise them. Cooking is always a good one because people don't always cook before they come to university, so people have shared recipes. Diet and exercise, so important for people on the spectrum to have a routine. But if that routine can include some exercise, that boosts your serotonin, so it keeps your mental health balanced. And if that's part of an autism routine, that's even better. So we've encouraged people to use the gym here. Communicating with other people and with tutors at university can seem simple if you know what to say, but if you don't know what to say and you don't know where to start, it's a good thing to discuss in the group. We've managed change. We've talked about going home and what it's like to go home, because if you get used to going to university, then going home for the holidays, although it might be pleasant for a lot of people, managing that change can be quite difficult. So we talked about managing the change, about moving home, and about how to cope with that and cope with Christmas. Because a lot of people on the spectrum don't actually like Christmas that much, because everything changes. You put a tree up and you put tinsel up or whatever you do in your countries, but that change is very different for them. Okay, so looking to the future, only 15% of autistic adults in the UK are in full-time paid employment. I mean, that's awful, isn't it? It's awful, and it's not something that at Keele we think is acceptable. So for the future, we're connecting with employers. We're looking at work placements initially based on campus. So that, that might be something within student services on campus where somebody could have a role, because it's very hard for people on the spectrum to sell themselves and to get work experience, which employers are more and more looking for. We have ambassadors that I've mentioned that come into group. Now, I don't see why ambassadors can't have autism. And so people who are in their third year may wish to become autism ambassadors for our group. And that would mean that they get a small salary for doing some hours. It would mean it would boost their confidence.